You are not yourself. Hey, this is American Priest, and my website is AmericanPriest.com, and I have videos on YouTube, and I also have a podcast on Blog Talk Radio. This little segment's going to be on the teaching that you are not yourself, meaning that everybody walks around with an identity, with a name, with a personal history, with a story, and they think that is who they are, and other people talk to them as if that is who they are. Ultimately, I don't think a self exists. The only self that really exists is your individual body. Different people in different bodies. And if you want to take that just a little bit further and reduce the self at its most basic level, I think you could say it's your body and your body's awareness. So if you want to reduce the mind to the most basic level, it's just awareness. Nothing more. And you are not yourself. You are, in fact, whatever has been aware that this person, this name, this fictionalization of your identity, and all the stuff that your identity, your social constructed self, whatever you want to call it, most people think of it as themselves. Whatever you've done, wherever you've been, whatever experiences you've had, that was not you. You is the person watching all that happening. You is the person aware of all that happening. But what was actually happening, all the stuff that lowercase you was doing, that's not really you. That's just whatever you want to call it. I mean, it doesn't exist. But again, it's what most people think of as that person and who they really are. But that's not who they really am. And I can even say that about myself, obviously. This person that gives talks on YouTubes or does podcasts or writes books or writes stuff on the internet, that's not me. The me is just the awareness of all that happening. And it is my body's awareness. And my body's awareness is, in fact, my body too. So it's really all your body. The self and your identity and everything is only your body. And part of your body is its ability to be aware. And that's the most simple form. And it's been my experience that when you start to get more complicated than that, you start to lose something. You start to speed up. Your mind begins to race. Problems begin to double and triple and have wars with each other. All these conflicts start to happen with people, with groups of people. But at the end of the day, at the end of the life, at the end of eternity, and there is no end, it's just the awareness that all this is happening right now. It's just that awareness. And that awareness is the body's awareness. And many of the exercises that I encourage on these videos on YouTube, also on the podcast, also on the website, are usually as simple as I can make them, simply because they can be universalized easier. The world has a lot of different religious traditions, and you go inside each tradition and you see a whole different system of gods and cosmologies, and it's really like learning an entirely new language. And that can often be very beneficial for people. And there are also immortals who have become immortal, physically immortal, on this planet chiefly through one religion, chiefly through one mystical tradition within one religion. But once you start trying to talk about one religion to people in another religion, it gets all sloppy. But what you can talk about is the fact that we are all human beings. And we may look different, but we don't look that different. I mean, we really don't look that different. The world has different cultures, different languages, different religions. But we don't really seem that different. We are all ultimately just individual bodies on a planet. That's it. And each individual body is aware not only of their own body, but of the sensory information around them. And New Age gurus will often talk about the higher self. And some of the talks on the higher self, I've heard good ones and I've heard mediocre ones. But I've heard plenty good ones about the higher self that talk of a self that's already perfect, that's already perfectly at ease, that's already resting perfectly in God, perfectly in eternity, perfectly in its own immortality. And Buddhism will sometimes talk about this as they will simply say, you are already enlightened. You are already enlightened. There is that enlightened self already in you. But what's interesting is the language they use so much of the time acts as if your higher self is really somewhere else. And some will even say it's a non-physical reality. Some will say it's another dimension. You know, some will say it's a higher self. Just the thing higher makes it seem like, oh, so if I go 6 feet above my head, that's where my higher self is. The higher self is in the body. It's physical. It's in the nervous system. It's here. It may be, we may not be used to accessing it so that it feels almost as if it is somewhere else in a different dimension. But that different dimension is inside our bodies. You are not yourself. You are your higher self, but your higher self is in your body. We are basically simply bodies with awareness. And anything else you put on top of that can often do a lot more harm than good. Not to mention cause a lot more stress than necessary. Because the spiritual life ultimately is learning how to relax. And it's a lot less stressful to just be a body with an awareness than it is to be an identity with an ego and a personal history in good things and bad things and blah blah blah, as everybody tells their story. And I've done this too. I'm not throwing stones. These are all mistakes that I've done. But it's making things more complicated than they need to be. Anyways, that's my 2 cents for now. And this is American Priest. Again, my website is americanpriest.com. Becoming Immortal by American Priest. americanpriest.com. Check out what I have going on my site. And I'm just going to keep producing more YouTube videos and podcasts as well. And more content, and more writing content, and should have some ebooks out there pretty soon. So, hope you all have a good evening. Take care.